Let's talk reactive.
All right, hey guys, thanks for joining us. So I'm Dave. I'm one of PARSIQ's community managers. It's been a little while since we had a PARSIQ AMA, but I think we're ready to get going. There's definitely a lot that's happened since the last one we've had, so I think we've got quite a lot to discuss. And luckily, I think we've got just the right people here for the job. We've got CEO Rong and CTO Danny here with me today. How are you guys doing? You all right?
Well, good, no good. Thanks for having us today, and thanks for everyone else coming in to listen.
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to be here today. Looking forward to the AMA.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us, guys. So, I wanted just to talk a little bit about I think the various stages that we've seen in development for a reactive network over the past few months. Obviously, we want to talk about our testnet. That's our latest big announcement. But just for anyone who listens to this who's maybe not quite fully familiarized with reactive network yet, I think it's probably a good idea just to give a brief, very brief, just high-level overview of what reactive network is, what we've designed it to do, what led us to the decision to actually take on this task. You guys are both more than qualified to do so. So is there any takers, Ronkai or Danny, to just give us a quick overview?
Yeah, I can talk probably at a high level, and Danny, if he wants to add in, he can add on the technical level as well, definitely. Keep it as brief as possible. So, which I think some of the questions we receive from community, we'll address it a little bit more, a bit more specifically, but very broad level, reactive network, we address it at the data level. It's a data execution layer that makes smart contracts truly reactive. The problem that we saw was that smart contracts right now on Web3, they do not respond to events because they are built on blockchains. Blockchains are state machines. And essentially what this means is that smart contract will execute when told to execute, but that's it. That's it doesn't know that there are other things happening within Web3 organically, and it wouldn't respond to those other things that's happening everywhere around it. Which is, if you look at it, compare it with Web2, that's actually a very big gap. In Web2, you have a database that's connected to the internet, you feed it your own custom database, it will just react accordingly. But on Web3, it doesn't work that way. Most people get around it by building the code externally, outside of Web3. And we really want to resolve this from a technological angle to give it, essentially giving reactive smart contracts eyes and ears, and then it will react. And making it cross-chain, of course, building on top of cross-chains interoperability protocols that basically enhance such capabilities across multiple chains. And from there, magic will happen because we are the data layer. People building decentralized applications, they will build on top of us, they will enhance their platforms, they will make user interface better, and from there, we're one step closer to mass adoption in Web3. So that's like a very high level explanation.
Yeah, that's very good summary. From my side, I would probably add as well that it's not only the data layer, because it is as well a computation layer, because with the current design of reactive network, we actually allowed for smart contracts for transactions to be executed in parallel, and with the way how we implemented that, we actually also provide very cheap transactions, which means that bigger projects with massive transactions in a way like even swaps and lendings and everything, they do require a lot of gas, and for a lot of gas you have to pay a lot of whatever is the native token, but let's say just money. And reactive network actually allows to offload these thick and expensive computations to our layer, while on the user front, you just get kind of the minimal possible gas utilization, and you delegate this job for reactive network.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. So would it be fair to say you can actually use reactive network to potentially lower gas costs for complex transactions on or contract executions across different chains as well?
I mean, this is one of possibilities, because I mean, reactive network as a public and general infrastructure. So we should not forget that, and we cannot really kind of pigeonhole reactive into specific use case in the sense, because it has its own distinct capabilities that will allow for very broad amount of use cases. The gas optimization is one of them.
Right. I think part of the whole development and testing process is that we're going to see new use cases and new applications for technology develop kind of as we develop. But I think that was a great intro. Thanks, guys. So we do also have pretty extensive technical docs up on our Reactive website now. And we do have a more like retail-oriented blog as well with info on the basics, a lot of different use cases. So head over to the website if you want to check any of those out and do a bit of reading about the network. So just before we touch on the testnet specifically, I thought it would be good just to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about what's changed with Reactive Network. Obviously, it's been a little while since our last AMA, so there's been some huge progress made by Daniil and his team, and some pretty significant changes as well. I think originally we'd kind of pitched Reactive as a network where you would host dApps natively on the network, which is something that's changed. There's been quite a few changes. So, Danny, you're the brains behind Reactive. Maybe you could take us through what do you think are the most important milestones that we've seen during the development over the last few months, and what are the biggest changes that we've seen between like the original concept of Reactive and where we are now?
Sure. Well, that's a good question. I mean, since conceptually, like if we talk on conceptual level, Reactive is what it was like on the day one. But of course, the implementation have changed drastically. Like from the day we first sat down and discussed it, and put some meat on just super raw idea, and of course at that stage you still don't know how it's going to turn out. It's just a theory at that moment before you get into the research and kind of start or try to develop something. I mean, before that, it's just a fantasy, basically. And from conceptual level, Reactive did not, like, the idea did not alter too much, because it was initially born as a kind of next iteration of smart contracts, giving them the flexibility, given dApps more flexibility over interchain not communication, like just generally interchain capabilities for their dApps, making them more self-aware, not just sandbox to the ecosystem. But then, of course, as far as implementation goes, there are many changes, and there's some things that will probably keep to be just ideas because they are technically impossible, or too complex to actually implement. But I don't think it's any of the ideas that we actually been talking, publicly. So you don't have to worry about that. And over the last few months, we actually made like a ton of progress. There was issues that we didn't know how to solve, and we couldn't solve them in a sense before we get to actual task. And today, for instance, we made huge progress in the sense of the nodes synchronization, because Reactive is very complicated network. And because we do have this one big EVM that is actually a home of many other EVMs, there are certain issues here in the question of how validator can actually, validate the network, and how you can, how anyone can actually synchronize node from ground zero, because the state of all these small reactive virtual machines is based on the events of external ecosystems, and it was a huge pain point for us in terms of making it actually public and decentralized infrastructure. And it's one of the issues that we have recently solved and are testing actually on our DevNet right now. It's not in the testnet yet, but since we do run testnet on our own, still it doesn't matter that much. And there's been a bunch of things like this, and there were a bunch of problems that we've been solving. I can talk about them forever, but I don't want to take the whole time.
Yeah, thanks for that, Danny. Well, I think I think the main thing we can safely say is we've really crossed the line between concept and reality now. Reactive smart contracts are deployed, the testnet's functioning. This is no longer just a concept. You guys have proven that it works now, in terms of real use cases even. And obviously, anyone who's been following development knows we recently announced the launch of our Open Testnet, which means that any developer can take part and help to prove this for themselves. They can take part in Reactive Network for themselves. So, Rong, maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about the Open Testnet stage, what it involves, what we're hoping to achieve from the reactive side from the testnet. And feel free, of course, to jump in, Danny, if you want to.
Yeah, sure. I can start this off. So this is an accumulation of a lot of efforts. Obviously, the tech has to be ready. So Danny's team was working really hard to make this ready. And I think some in the community had heard from me before. We are early. In what sense? So actually, we could have started this in January, like testnet, open it up because, people will come and test it and that sort of stuff. But because the tech side is ready in that sense. Obviously, we only started this in April now for a variety of reasons. First and foremost is actually the tech might be ready, but the docs are not. If any developers come in, they wouldn't have anything to help them with, and that's not a good starting point. So it's okay, tech is ready, but let everything catch up. And we took about 3 months or so. It's not just that. There's also the marketing, the various other teams, the materials, the education. All of it is out there. Do take a look at our website again. Shout out to the teams that make it possible. If you go to the documentations, there you go to our website. There's a lot of effort put into it. We have an education page as well for new devs who. This is a new concept to any devs, even if you're an experienced Solidity developer. For the first time, you're building smart contracts that are reactive. Oh, what does that mean? What's these new things that you need to watch out for? As long as you know Solidity, you can code, but there are certain new functions. Just go and check out our documentation, check out our education page, jump to the part that you're not very familiar with, and you can get started very, very quickly. That's the whole point. We wanted to lower the barriers for developers. And that's the objective of the testnet. Come in, test, see how the product, this technology can really enhance what you're trying to build on Web3. Right now, Web3 traditional smart contracts. In some sense, we are doing a smart contract 2.0. Smart contracts, traditional ones, they can do this, they can do that. There's a lot of functions. The sky's the limit, but there is still a limit because at the end of the day, it is sort of like a robot with no eyes and ears. We are giving the eyes and ears. You just need to add on a React smart contract that acts as the eyes and ears. You can upgrade your debt modularly, and from there, you can start coding for more advanced use cases, advanced kind of different experience that your users can use. And looking forward, I think that's part of this question as well. What can developers expect? We will work closely with developers deploying here. The earlier you come in, the better. And that's something that we want to reach out, have a shout out to all developers as well. We will run something for developers. I can't announce it right now, but do look out for this space. And if you talk to us early enough, we'll already give you a heads up anyway. You'll be sweet building on us. And from there, in terms of timeline, there'll be a lot of collaborations. Eventually, we'll open up technologically. Right now, it's sort of a 1:1. If you're building from one blockchain, you can take it. It can sort of react on another blockchain. Once our backend we have linked up with infrastructure-wise, eventually you can start testing for many-to-many. You can start testing for a lot of different kind of use cases, even more advanced. And by the time Mainnet launches, you can just shift it from testnet to Mainnet. I'm not trying to preclude, sort of like jump ahead, but there is a possibility that even at testnet, some of these functions, as long as we connect to the mainnet, you guys can already sort of like get it work if the demand is there. So developers do communicate with us, work closely with us. We have social medias, we have Telegram groups as well that we can set up for developers especially. Dave probably will give a shout out during this AMA. We have a new reactive sort of channel on Telegram for developers. Do turn up there, ask questions, work with us, and we're getting started.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if anyone is listening to this who's a developer and you're interested in taking part in the testnet, don't hesitate to get in touch. We've got all of the information you need to get started up on the website, but please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we can work something out. I think it's like you say, Ronka. It's I think a lot of people think that, well, you come up with a great idea and that's 99% of the work, but that's just the very beginning, right? You've got to then prove that idea works, make it into reality, which Danny and his team have done a great job on. Like, that's been proven now. We've proven that it does work, but you've got to get from that stage to actual adoption where everyone in the space is using it and recognizing that this is, the correct solution to use. That's a lot of hard work in itself as well. So I think that's the stage we're at next, where we've got to. Sorry, Danny, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just remember this remember this IT joke So it says like first 90% of the project is the hardest part, and then starts second 90%. So the idea is 90%, and it's still the hardest part, but then the rest is even more funny.
Yeah, it's like the Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak comparison. Everyone remembers Steve Jobs, no one remembers Steve Wozniak for some reason. But yeah, I mean, fortunately, we've got both the idea guy and the execution guy here. So a lot of the hard work is done, but there's still a lot of hard work to be done in actually sort of gaining adoption throughout the ecosystem and proving. I mean, it's why they call it proof of concept, right? We've got to prove that this is actually the best solution for people to use. So we've got quite a few questions from our community as well on various different subjects. So it's probably a good time to go through some of those, I think. The first one is based on investors. So they ask, will there be an announcement of any investors for Reactive Network as a project? Obviously, we've talked about investors a few times in the past. We've made it known that we're doing funding rounds. But Ronkai, would you like to maybe take this one?
Yeah, I can start on this. I think this is pretty straightforward. So as we announced quite early on, we're doing an investment round. Things are going pretty deep. We actually have a few on board already, but we wouldn't make an announcement yet. We will make an announcement at the end of the round. So the whole idea is that, it's been concluded, we've raised this amount, who are on board, the typical kind of news announcement on press release you see, we'll do that. And we'll see them very nicely on picture, all their logos. The whole point then is from there, then the next stage starts. I think I wouldn't give a timeline for you guys because again, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but do expect it in a number of months.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, there's always a lot of negotiations, contracts, etc. going into these things, so it's difficult to predict. But I think, as Ronkai says, fair to assume you will hear details in the future. So the next question is on testers. So will there be an announcement of projects that will start testing on Reactive Network? I think, like, to a degree, that'll depend on the relationship between the tester and the network, whether they want to engage in co-marketing, etc. It's probably fair to say there will be some, but we are still at an early stage in testing. Ronkai or Danny, would either of you like to make any comment on this?
I can say a little bit. I think in terms of testers wise, they are on various different stages. And do remember also that for testers, it's not just our timeline, because it's open, like anyone come and we'll help you out. You guys can ask us questions, but it also depends on them. So those that we've been talking to even before the Open Testnet, they are on different stages as well. Some of them are quite deep in terms of trying it out. Some of them is like, okay, conceptually, business-wise, they have a line, but technically, they have their own timeline as well. Maybe their tech team is too busy building their own platform, so they have no time to look at this yet. Then they give us a timeline, say 1 month down the road, 2 months down the road. Some of them even third quarters, maybe July or August, they have to look at this. Then they have the time to look at this. So we have those in our picture. And I think down the road, we will make an announcement. And we have to be fair as well. I think those that committed and they started testing, we will definitely include it and say that, hey, these are the known testers, and we let everyone know. And there'll be some co-marketing together with those projects. It'll be great for everyone. For those projects that have yet to jump on board, we'll do it something separate. And the whole point is really to reward those that's already testing on us. Like, hey, you guys believe in us, you guys put in the priorities and start the testing with us, we'll put you as our priority too.
Right, I think it comes in all shapes and sizes, right? You can have some projects which are testing quite early on, which are happy to co-market, some which aren't, some which... It tends to be the case that the bigger the project, the less, or let's say the more cautious they are about committing to anything. If it's a really massive project, they're either not going to test super early, or if they do test super early, they're not going to be looking to do like co-marketing on it. You're not going to get like a Uniswap or something testing right at the very beginning of the testnet and doing co-marketing based around it. It's just not going to happen. But I think we'll see things develop as time goes on. We're just right at the start here, so there's plenty of time. Next question is based on like events. So ask, will the team be in any events as Reactive Network, giving out talks and speaking? So, for example, Cyberport 1 UN speakers. Well, I think definitely we'll be doing a lot of events. As for speaking slots, that's something we're definitely looking into. Ronkai, you can probably speak a little bit more on this. But...
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll have presence in major events worldwide. This is, I think, once Testnet has been announced, the events sort of engagement strategy will be a lot clearer. Before that, it's also a bit difficult. We talk to project, it's like, hey, do you want to test? We have the documents, everything's ready, but the timeline might not be right. But right now, everything is correct. So I think look forward to, we have quite a few. One, I think DebCon in Berlin next month, that there's some of our guys will be there. We are prioritizing a lot of the devs related events. There's going to be one EFCC coming up in Europe. There's the DevCon in Thailand, if I'm not wrong, at the end of the year. There's quite a few things that we are prioritizing those, like we're going to go big on those. So do watch out for the space. Obviously, closer to the events, we will let everyone know how things are like. But these events are there for our purpose, and our purpose are very clear. We're there to engage developers, engage projects, engage the ecosystem, get them to know that this is a game changer. This is smart contracts 2.0, whatever they want to look at it as, and really come in and start testing and start building on us and realize that, hey, this makes things, this is a game changer. And from there, we want developers, people who can build, to start thinking, okay, with this as a tool set, now I have the capability to do something more. What is the new use cases I can therefore build that I couldn't do it without Reactive previously? And that's essentially why we're going to events.
Yeah, I think it's looking like it's going to probably be a pretty packed calendar for the rest of the year. It's like you say, these events are really great sort of recruiting grounds to just get a chance to talk to other developers. Sometimes it's tricky to actually get that really dedicated line just out to developers, but I think some of these events are really fertile grounds for that. The next question is around the roadmap to Mainnet. So that's a pretty important question. What's the roadmap going to look like? What can we, from like an outside looking in perspective, what can we expect to see between now and the Mainnet launch? What's the big milestones we should be looking for? I'll leave that open to either of you guys, who can probably talk from a different perspective on this.
Perhaps Daniil can start on this first, so he can talk about the technical side, like this is how it looks like from Testnet now all the way to Mainnet, and then I can talk about everything in between.
Yeah, all right. So from the technical perspective, we are still solving a bunch of problems, and there are probably two different directions to these problems. One of them being the actual interoperability, which is not it's not a straightforward game, and there is still a lot to research and implement, and then we still like looking for the networks that we're going to support as source of events and destination of callbacks and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily going to be one-to-one, and we actually have made just a little spoiler. Yeah, we made like a big partnership in terms of making interoperability of Reactive more real and at much grander scale than we expected it initially. So it's kind of makes it easier, but we're still looking forward to integration part and making it smooth. And then the kind of second road of problems is decentralization. And what that means, if you look at any project around, what you can see is that everyone have their own stages of decentralization, and every project launches being barely decentralized, because for some ideas it takes ages to work out the solutions and algorithms and mathematics for that. And for us, it's not really that much different. We still have to fight for decentralization on the way to mainnet, and after we release the initial version of mainnet. Before we launch mainnet, of course, what we're looking at is to make reactive network, open to any validator. So making it possible for anyone to come and validate the reactive network and get the incentives of validator and stuff like that. But apart from that, or beside that, we actually looking at decentralization of something that we call relay network, that have been idea of which has been pretty noticeably altered from its initial state. But we're still looking on how we can make this network decentralized so anyone can join and partake in common event validation and consensus. So there is still a lot of things to solve, and I would say these two subjects are kind of main subjects, and then there is, of course, a lot of smaller things, including the infrastructure itself, making reactive network accessible from anywhere in the world day one, and making some ecosystem things and faucets and everything along these lines, and then improvements of React Scan and some other things. There's just a lot to do, and of course at the same time we're working on our docs and on our education content to make it just as extensive and as informative as possible.
Thank you so much, Daniil. I think you covered all the technical stuff there, or as many as you can within a short period of time. That sort of the roadmap from now to the mainnet. I'll cover sort of like everything in between. That's sort of either non-technical or sort of coordination with technical, but essentially they are everything else. Right now in April, we just announced Testnet. There will be some form of incentivization. Let's just put it that way. I think it's pretty clear. We want devs to look at us. Those who recognize the value, they know they'll come at us. They have the whole idea is basically we are good. We know we are good. Those who know we are good will have already come to us. Then the key part is how do we get those who never heard of us to find out we exist and then to even pay attention to what we are. So that's what we're going to work on. All sorts of different campaigns, all sorts of different things in between. We have certain internal milestones throughout the months. I think from June onwards, you guys can probably expect probably every other month we have something big. We have small things in between as well. Again, I mentioned before, I'm not going to announce about announcements, but this is sort of a broad timeline. We have things about I think earlier we talked about investors, so we're going to announce about that. We're going to have certain milestones related to that. And as with investors, that comes with ecosystem as well. It comes down to, okay, which ecosystems are we going to work with? Why are we prioritizing those? There is a reason, and to be fair for us, we are actually quite agnostic. Basically, we can work with a lot of tech stacks. We can do a lot of things. The problem always comes down to prioritization of resources. And we will prioritize those partners that, well, believe in us. I think that's one thing, but also on how big their ecosystem is. And that is something that you guys will see over the next few months on a sort of roadmap towards mainnet. Obviously, closer to mainnet, we'll talk more about funds. We talk more about the new coin that fuels the whole economy. A lot of it depends on also the tech side, like it's ready, the infrastructure is set up. Behind the scenes, we've calculated properly. A lot of things are subjected to change right now because, well, the infrastructure takes time to set up. sometimes we design it this way and it makes sense on paper mathematically, and then when you actually build it and then realize that, oh, there's this portion you need to adjust, you need to change, and that changed the whole calculation again. So we are never going to announce it early. We announce it when everything is ready and it makes sense, and this is how it look like. Investors see the table, they're happy. We see the table, we're happy. We announce it to everyone to let everyone know that this is how it's going to look like. So there may be questions you guys have been asking about in community as well, related to tokens, to coins. All of it is closer to mainnet because we need to make sure that the science meets the economics. That's the whole point. And from there to mainnet, obviously there'll be a series of activities, sort of a build up towards mainnet launch. We will have a big launch. With the mainnet launch, it sort of should coincide with the coin as well, because obviously with the mainnet coming up, it has to be fueled by our coin. And we have a broad idea. We have a timeline. So far we're on track. Things haven't changed. It's not just limited on tech, but it's also on both finances, economics, ecosystem, partners, developers coming on board, etc. So we have all of that happening this year. And next year, obviously beyond mainnet, there's a lot more activities that we have. Again, they're all subjected to change because different development fronts, we may face obstacles here, we may have certain boosts there, and certain things are faster than we expected, certain things are slower than expected. But right now, I think when we launch, a lot of it depends on our interoperability partners. Obviously, EVM chains, as many that we can support, we will support. Going into beyond mainnet, we will definitely tackle non-EVMs. Solana is a big ecosystem. Obviously, that is great. Aptos, etc. There's a lot of things that's floating around. As long as a lot of those infrastructure partners, they support them, then obviously we will try to support as well. It depends. Some of it are not just on us. It depends on our partners or the infrastructure that we're building on top of or we are integrating with. But that is sort of like beyond mainnet that I can sort of envision. And with that, that's the sort of a little bit techie side, but with that, it goes down to the ecosystem as well. We integrate, we have a further push, kind of similar to our mainnet launch. We have a testnet and then we have mainnet for those non-EVMs. And we go one round again with those ecosystems, getting them to see that, hey, this is a game changer. It's a game changer already for EVMs. They would have heard about us. How do we change their platform for the better?
Thanks, guys. I think that gives a really good overview of like the major milestones between now and mainnet launch. The next question we got, it kind of touches on something you've already covered a little bit during that answer, Rong, but I'll ask it anyway, just to see if there's anything we can give a little more info on. Maybe something we can't cover at the moment, but they ask, will Reactive Network have a reactive ecosystem fund? That's probably one for you, Rong.
Yeah, I think for this question, there are certain things that are sort of embargoed for now. I wouldn't talk more about that, but expect some form of action on two things. We are a product for developers. So obviously our clients, so sort of like direct developers and businesses and projects and dApps building on chain. That's our first part. And they will have something in order to work with us. Some form, we have some campaigns for them, and actually it goes beyond campaigns, some form of support, some form of advice, some form of ecosystem multiplier. So it's sort of like a network. You want to create a network, you want to create an ecosystem, and it boosts from there. Then there's the second part related to the clients of our clients. Who uses those platforms? Those who uses those platforms are the users, you and me on the streets, etc. We have those things, those people in mind as well. I think it makes sense for there to be a triple win. The users of the platforms benefit, the platforms benefit, we benefit, and that's something that goes beyond just say fun or anything. It goes a lot deeper than that. It goes with a lot of ecosystem discussions, negotiations as well. Do expect those things further down the line. But right now, it's I would say it's embargoed. I wouldn't go too deep into that.
Yeah, fair play. So let's just watch this space. The next question is specifically for Danny. So they ask, is an RSC, so a reactive smart contract, basically an on-chain smart trigger? Can you explain the high-level building blocks of how reactive smart contracts work within Reactive Network, within the architecture?
Sure. So to answer the question whether reactive smart contracts are smart triggers on chain, the short answer is yes. Whatever we are doing today is kind of the essence of all ideas that we've been thinking about or developing over the past 5 years in PARSIQ. So reactive smart contracts are to some big extent, they are smart triggers, and with the difference that smart triggers were fully proprietary and off-chain solution, while the reactive smart contracts are the public infrastructure. We don't have reactive networks code out on GitHub, but it's just today because there is no question or denial that reactive is going to be a fully open source product, and in the future might actually create even more products and forks of reactive network itself. But yeah, I'm a little drifting away from the question. So, and if we talk about like the building blocks, and I will just give very brief overview, like technical overview, what is reactive network on the technical level. So reactive network itself is like the normal EVM chain where you have the usual stuff, you have the blocks and transactions and, well, EVM itself, and you can have normal stuff, right? All sorts of protocols and DEXs and everything along these lines. But we don't build reactive network for that. We actually, to kind of tackle on the question that you asked before, but I kind of got carried away. The difference is that we, with reactive network, we are not looking to bring the liquidity straight into the network. We are on a different level here because we are this computation and interoperability and actually, well, reactivity layer, which is quite different. And here we kind of, the similarities to normal network, they're ending here, because as it's not meant for just deploying your normal smart contracts, and the reactive network itself is actually consists of many smaller EVM networks. And for everyone who deploys a smart contract on reactive, you actually get your own React VM, so smaller subnet, where all of your transactions will be executed. And because of that, because of this approach, actually, we can execute transactions in parallel. So the transactions, imagine there is like 1,000 transactions or 10,000 transactions, and all of them are destined to different smart contracts. All of them will be executed at the same time. Not all of them, of course, because they're like there are limits on the hardware level, some on the software level, of course, as well. So if we look like on the broader picture, how it looks. So there is a source chain. Let's take Ethereum, just Ethereum for example. And on Ethereum, you get the blocks happening. And then there is a reactive network that actually listens for new blocks on Ethereum. And when the new block happens on Ethereum, it gets every transaction from there, every transaction received, actually. It gets every log entry from there, so events. And then it asks the internal subscription service. And subscription service is the service that you use to subscribe to external events. And it asks this internal service, like there's a bunch of events. Are there any reactive smart contracts that actually interested in this event? And from there, kind of our magic starts, because reactive smart contracts are not located on the main layer, but they are in these small EVMs. So we initiate these EVMs, and we made a crazy progress in terms of the performance here, because those reactive networks, they are not like a fully capable node. So we fully got rid of Geth itself, and Geth has been like the native implementation of Ethereum node. We were able to get rid of this, all the abstraction layers, and what we have been left with is just the EVM itself that is a state machine and that processes transactions and, well, its own state. And for depending on the destination, and in this scenario, the destination is the reactive smart contract. We can assemble the separate queues depending on the reactive smart contract, and then we can execute these contracts in parallel. And then it's up for the reactive smart contract what happens next. They either do nothing, in the sense like they accept the event, they execute their own logic, but they do decide not to send anything to external source. So they don't want to get anything propagated to the destination chain at this moment, or they do this command to actually send my transaction to the chain X or to the chain X, Y, and Z. So it actually within processing of one event, you can actually run your external transaction on 10 different chains at the same time. And yeah, this information gets propagated to like main layer of reactive network, and from there it gets propagated to the external ecosystems. There is a lot to that, how that works, but yeah, I think that's like very, very broad picture of like technical picture of reactive network.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. I think that's a great overview of how reactive smart contracts work within the network. Just for anyone who's not familiar with the term, smart trigger was a term used for the original PARSIQ monitoring platform, term coined by one of our original founders, Anatoly. And this was basically an if this then that logic. And I think, as Danny says, the fundament of this if this then that like execution of predefined logic very much applies still with reactive smart contracts. I think we defined reactive smart contracts as like smart triggers on steroids once in some of our like marketing blurb, which is probably fair to say, I think. Our next question that I'm going to take is, it's based around some comparisons. So they ask, how does Reactive Network differ from other interoperability solutions out there? Interoperability, if I can pronounce it, is obviously it's a pretty broad term, covers quite a lot of things. I think there's a few different things you can look at, such as the fact that, for example, everything on Reactive is happening on chain. So right there, you get a few differentials from other solutions where you might have off-chain computation, for example. Either Daniil or Rong, is there anything that sort of comes top of mind for you? What really makes Reactive Network stand out from other, for example, like if we just look at terms of cross-chain automation solutions?
I can perhaps start off on this, and if Danny wants, he can add to it. So when we talk about interoperability, the image comes to a lot of people's minds are basically just bridges, right? And there are different types of bridges. How they are structured are different, and therefore they have different names. And I think the current iteration and right now in our current market, what's getting people excited are the equivalents of, say, CCIP, XLR, Layer 0, etc. We, in our previous answers, we sort of did touch a little bit on this, especially Danny. He covered in quite a bit of technical details. So I wouldn't go into it. I would say that we are, I think Danny also said we are different. We are at the smart contract level. I would say something that I like to say to, especially, for example, VCs and people who are not technical, like me, and it helps people understand. So imagine this, blockchains, because they are blockchains, they are state machines, they only stay within themselves, so they are islands. Like Bitcoin will never talk to Ethereum, like as in the nodes wouldn't talk to each other because, well, there is for security, everyone has to agree to each other. If I am doing Bitcoin, I wouldn't do Ethereum, for example. And it's the same for every other blockchains. Every blockchain is an island because they're structured that way. And then when Web3 comes out and everyone starts to have a proliferation of all these different blockchains and people start thinking that, okay, architecturally that makes sense, but business is business. We want to connect them together. How do we do it? People start building bridges, and we call them literally bridges because, well, they're connecting islands together. Are we a bridge? We are not, because we make smart contracts reactive. We give them eyes and ears. Think of us as autonomous vehicles traveling on those bridges. And that's also why we do need to integrate with some of the interoperability solutions out there. They already built the bridge. We don't have to build it ourselves. Why don't we travel on their bridges? We connect smart contracts together, let them observe the data across all the different blockchains, and they can react on their own because now they have eyes and ears. We give you eyes, we give you ears, now act according to what you are coded for. And the smart contracts will run. And it will run, and it will avoid things that it's not coded for. Just like an autonomous vehicles, it will not hit a wall because it sees that there's a wall there. It will just turn right when it needs to turn right. It will turn left when it needs to turn left. It will stop if you see a pedestrian, etc. It will go on and go on based on its coding. And that's essentially what we've built. I hope that this is a very good analogy. Maybe Danny wants to add on to it.
Well, I think you summed it up pretty well. Or actually draw this analogy. So I just probably want to say that you shouldn't look at reactive as just interoperability solution. It's much more than that. Interoperability is just a part of reactive that makes these connections, cross-chain connections possible. But then there is the reactivity itself and the what we call inversion of control, well, which is just like a traditional concept in software engineering, and we actually bring it to the blockchain that allows us to actually initiate transactions without having user to initiate these transactions. And apart from that, we have the computation and stuff like that. So it's not just interoperability, because there are like a bunch of solutions like that out there in the market that doing great job doing a great job of communicating messages between the chains. But reactive, it's a smaller part of a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We obviously don't want to sell the tech short. There's quite a lot of different aspects of use case there. I think like decentralization gets talked about a lot, though, and so that's why this question comes up quite a lot. Obviously, interoperability is quite a current buzzword, and you've got all these different decentralized systems out there that people believe in, but obviously, unless we can have different solutions to make them all work together, they're never going to be particularly viable. But yeah, I think that's a really good point that there's quite a lot of use case even beyond just cross-chain interoperability for reactive. But we're getting towards the end of our time, so we've got a few questions left, but I'm just going to take one last community question. And that should probably be a pretty quick one to answer, but it's one we get asked a lot. So when can we expect to see the launch of Reactive Mainnet? And that's either one of you can answer that. It's up to you guys.
The answer is this year. It will be this year. It can't be next year. It has to be this year. Exactly when, I think previously we talked about the quarters, but if it's great news, we'll let everyone know, but we don't want to create hype just to dash it. We don't want to prejudge a lot of things. As I think we already made quite clear, there's a lot of things that are, some of it out of our hands, some of it within our hands, but there's a lot of uncertainty. But our timeline so far, we are on track, and it should be this year. I think that would be my answer.
Awesome. Yeah, that'll do me. So yeah, that's the last question we'll take from the community. So I think we can start bringing things to a close. We're pretty much up to 10 now. Last thing I wanted to quickly mention, though, was our unicornization campaign. That's a mouthful to pronounce, but it's we started that at the start of this month, and it's kind of a next step to previous campaigns we've done, and it really just gives anyone the opportunity to think up and submit different ideas for like a project or dApp that makes use of reactive smart contracts. You don't need like in-depth technical knowledge, you don't need coding ability or anything like that. It's just submitting a basic concept of how you think a dApp or project could make use of reactive smart contracts. The idea behind this was really just to give people an understanding of the concept of reactive smart contracts, get people thinking about it, the different things you could do with it, and to get any followers of the project just really keep that front of mind. And who knows, if we get really good ideas, our product team might be able to make that into a proof of concept, might be able to show what could really be done with it in reality. And there's 5 days left on this at the moment, so if anyone's listening and does want to make a submission, then you can win PARSIQ as a reward for that. All you've got to do is submit a basic concept, but we'd like to see sort of what ideas people come up with for use cases, because there really is like quite literally limitless use cases you could apply this tech to. So we've come up with quite a lot ourselves, but we're interested to see what everyone else can come up with. But I think we've covered a lot of ground there today. You guys gave some great answers that I couldn't cover. So I appreciate you guys joining us. Is there anything else that either of you wants to mention before we wrap things up?
I'm all good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us. And well, thanks to everyone who tuned in for this AMA. Well, space.
Yeah. Well, perfect. So thanks a lot for joining, guys. And thanks to everyone who listens to this, who's listening now or listens in the future. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.